Simple decision trees are very intuitive because they make decisions like we humans do, and their rule-based structure resembles human decision-making processes. If you're comfortable with asking yes or no questions, you're ready for decision trees. Decisions are made by traversing the tree from root to leaf based on feature conditions. Decision trees work by repeatedly asking the most informative questions to reduce uncertainty. A swan clearly doesn't look like a duck, so the tree classifies it correctly. This bird might look like a duck and even swim like one, but it isn't actually a duck, and neither does our tree think it is. The same logic applies to this bird as well. A rubber ducky, on the other hand, is a duck, at least by our rules, so it gets classified as a duck. And finally, a goose may look and swim like a duck, but our tree thinks that it is not. In a decision tree, the root node is easy to spot. Nothing points to it. All the arrows start from there. Intermediate nodes have arrows coming in and arrows going out. They receive a decision and split again. Leaf nodes are the endpoints. Arrows point to them, but nothing comes out. That's where the final prediction lives. The arrows that connects roots, intermediate nodes, and leaves are called branches. Now imagine we change the very first rule. Instead of asking, does it swim like a duck? We ask, does it have a red belly? Suddenly, we have two different trees. So, which one is better? And more importantly, how do we decide what question to ask at each node? Is that something we can pre-decide, or does the data tell us? To answer that, we need a way to measure how useful a split is. That same measure lets us compare entire trees. In other words, compare models. Let's start with an extremely simple decision tree, one that has only a root node and two leaf nodes, with no intermediate splits. In decision tree terminology, such a tree is called a decision stump. Decision stumps are useful in certain settings, for example, as building blocks in ensemble methods, which we'll cover in a future session. Now, can such a simple tree actually make decisions? Yes, but only very coarse ones. For example, it may be able to separate swans from duck lookalikes. If that is your classification objective, a simple tree may be sufficient. However, this kind of tree cannot handle complex problems, such as distinguishing a duck from other very similar duck-like species, like the example we saw earlier. When a model is too simple to capture the underlying patterns in the data, we say it is underfitting. For now, you can think of underfit trees as models that are too simple to solve harder or more nuanced problems. On the opposite end, we can run into overfitting. This happens when a decision tree becomes so complex that it perfectly classifies every training sample. At first glance, this may seem ideal, but there is a problem. The model has effectively memorized the training data rather than learning general patterns. As a result, when it encounters new or unseen data during inference, its performance may degrade because those patterns were never learned during training. These two situations, underfitting and overfitting, represent the extreme ends of model complexity. In practice, we need to find a balance between them. This balance is known as the bias-variance trade-off. We'll explore the bias-variance trade-off in more detail, specifically in the context of decision trees, in a later session. What we've looked at so far belongs to a family called classification trees. They're called that because the tree's job is to assign a sample to a category. In classification, you can have binary classification or multi-class classification. Binary classification means two outcomes, for example, cat or dog. The tree we saw earlier was a multi-class classification tree because it classified objects into more than two categories, like swan, duck, goose, and so on. Now, regression trees work differently. Instead of outputting a class, they output a continuous number. For example, imagine we're predicting house prices. A house with fewer than 5 bedrooms, fewer than 3 bathrooms, and a brick front might fall into a particular leaf of the tree. All the houses that already landed in that leaf have known prices. The regression tree simply takes the average of those prices, say $283,000, and outputs that as the prediction. Decision trees are widely used in credit scoring, medical diagnosis, and rule-based decision systems. One big advantage is that they're easy to interpret, need very little pre-processing, and handle nonlinear relationships well. I'll cover that nonlinearity part in a future short video. Decision trees feel intuitive because they make decisions the way humans do, through a sequence of simple, rule-based choices. But if they're not trained carefully, they can make poor decisions. They're prone to overfitting and can be sensitive to small data changes, which we'll explore in a future video on the bias-variance trade-off in decision trees. Before we recap and end the video, here are some brain teasers for you. So here's the problem. What can you do to fix this? What would make it to give the model enough flexibility to finally say, this is a goose? To organize your learning and track your progress effortlessly, visit statisfaction.info. We would love to read your answers in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe. It motivates us to create more content for you. This slide provides a brief overview of what we've covered and suggests recommended videos for your next steps. For deeper dives on decision trees, head over to statisfaction.info. You'll find videos on bias, variance trade-offs, tree comparisons, random forests, and bagging and boosting methods, and so on, if you're ready to enter the world of trees.